The darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by the cold light of distant stars. In this vast emptiness, 300 warships moved with deadly precision, their hulls gleaming like metal sharks in the starlight. The Zephyrian armada had found what they were hunting for. Admiral Kethvar stood tall on the bridge of his massive flagship. His reptilian skin caught the blue glow of the control panels as he watched the tactical display with hungry eyes. His long clawed fingers tapped against the metal railing, while his forked tongue flicked out to taste the recycled air. Victory was close now. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out, his voice excited. "We have found them. One human ship, alone and drifting. No escort vessels detected." Kethvar's mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. This sound, always, made his crew nervous, but today it meant they had caught their prey. For many months, human ships had disappeared from the war zones. The galaxy wondered where Earth's forces had gone. Some thought they were building secret weapons. Others believed they had given up the fight, but Kethvar knew better. Humans were tricky creatures, and they were planning something. "Show me," he commanded. The main screen displayed a single ship, floating motionless in space. It looked small and helpless compared to the massive Zephyrian fleet surrounding it. Scorch marks covered its hull, and several sections appeared to be without power. Debris floated around it like the remains of a recent battle. "Perfect," Kethvar whispered. "Signal all ships. Form a complete sphere around the human vessel. No escape routes." On the human ship, Captain Li Jun sat in his command chair and watched the enemy fleet take position around them. His bridge looked terrible. Sparks flew from broken panels, smoke drifted from damaged equipment, and half the lights flickered weakly. Several crew stations sat empty and dark. Li Jun appeared calm despite the desperate situation. His uniform jacket was torn and burned in places, telling the story of recent combat. His 12 crew members worked quietly at their posts, their faces showing determination mixed with fear. "Captain," Engineer Kim Hana reported from her station near the back of the bridge. Her young face was streaked with grease and sweat from working on the damaged systems. "They are surrounding us completely. I count 300 ships covering every possible escape route." Li Jun nodded slowly. "Any attempts to contact us?" "Yes, sir. Incoming transmission now." The main screen flickered and showed the face of Admiral Kethvar. His reptilian features looked cruel and confident. Sharp teeth showed when he spoke, and his yellow eyes gleamed with anticipation. "Human vessel," the alien admiral said in a cold voice. "You are completely surrounded by the Zephyrian armada. Power down all weapons and prepare to surrender immediately. You have exactly 10 minutes to comply with this order." Li Jun stood up slowly and straightened his damaged uniform. Despite the hopeless situation, his voice remained steady and calm. "This is Captain Li Jun of the vessel Defiant Wanderer. We are experiencing critical system failures throughout the ship and cannot comply with your demands at this time." Kethvar's eyes narrowed to yellow slits. "Then you and your crew will be destroyed. You have been warned." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the human bridge in tense silence. Several crew members exchanged worried glances, but their captain remained unnaturally calm. Li Jun turned to his young communications officer. "Ensign Park Min-ho, activate the emergency beacon now." The young man's hands hesitated over his control panel. "Sir, are you certain about this?" "Once we transmit that signal, there will be no turning back. Do it immediately." Park Min-ho's fingers moved quickly across the console. A brief but powerful signal burst across subspace frequencies, carrying a simple message that would change everything. "Package delivered. Execute Protocol 7. Back on the Zephyrian flagship, the communications officer intercepted the transmission within seconds. "Admiral, the humans just sent an encrypted message. Our translation computers indicate," it reads, "package delivered. Execute Protocol 7. Kethvar's scaled brow wrinkled in confusion and annoyance. Desperate words from a defeated enemy. They are calling for help that will never arrive in time. But something about the human captain's behavior troubled the Admiral. Li Jun had shown no fear, no desperation, no pleading for mercy. Instead, he had remained strangely calm and confident, as if he knew something that Kethvar did not. This worried the experienced military commander more than he wanted to admit, Maintain formation, Kethavar ordered his fleet. All weapons remain locked on target. If they attempt any tricks, destroy them instantly. The Zephyrian ships held their positions in a perfect sphere around the lone human vessel. From the outside, it looked like a hopeless situation for the humans. 300 advanced warships surrounded one damaged and apparently helpless ship. The outcome seemed obvious to everyone watching, but appearances could be deceiving in the vast darkness of space, and the Zephyrians were about to learn that humans were far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The damaged human ship floated in space like a wounded animal surrounded by hungry predators. The defiant wanderer looked terrible from the outside. Her metal hull was blackened and torn in many places. Large holes showed where enemy weapons had hit her. Pieces of broken equipment drifted around the ship like space garbage. Several of her sensor dishes were completely gone, and others hung loose from twisted metal supports. But inside the ship, things were not what they seemed. In the cramped engineering section deep in the ship's belly, Kim Hana watched her computer, screens with intense focus. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as numbers and graphs changed on the displays. The information she saw told a very different story than what the enemy fleet could see from outside. "Captain," she called over the ship's communication system, "the quantum resonance field is getting close to the right levels. Everything is working perfectly." On the bridge, Captain Li Jun stared at the tactical display that showed all 300 enemy ships arranged around them. The alien vessels formed a perfect sphere with the human ship at the center. Each enemy warship was positioned exactly where Li Jun had hoped they would be. "Perfect positioning," he said with satisfaction. "They have arranged themselves exactly where we need them to be." Lieutenant Commander Cho Suri stood next to the captain's chair. She was Li Jun's second in command and had served with him for many years. Her face showed confusion and worry as she looked at the tactical display. "Sir, should we not be more worried about the 300 ships that want to destroy us?" she asked. Li Jun turned to look at her with calm eyes. "Those 300 ships are about to discover they have made a very big mistake in their thinking, Cho." Suri frowned. "What do you mean, sir?" "How long until the cascade reaches the dangerous level?" Li Jun asked Kim Hana. The engineer's voice came through the communication system from deep in the ship. 17 minutes, sir. The exotic matter containment system is building up power at the correct speed. Everything is going according to plan." Far away on the bridge of the massive Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethavar walked back and forth like a caged animal. Something was bothering him, but he could not figure out what it was. His science officers had reported strange readings from the human ship. "Commander," he called to his chief science officer, "what is causing those power changes in the human ship?" The science officer studied his instruments with a worried expression. "We do not know, sir. Their reactor seems to be going through unusual patterns. It could be damage from battle or what?" Kethavar demanded. "Or they are charging something that we cannot identify." Kethavar had fought in many space battles during his long military career. His instincts for danger had kept him alive when other admirals had died. Now those same instincts were screaming warnings in his mind. "Tell all ships to maintain their distance, but keep all weapons pointed at the human vessel. Something is not right here." Back on the defiant wanderer, Ensign Park Minho looked up from his communication console with worry on his young face. "Captain, some of the enemy ships are moving back a little. I think they are starting to suspect something." Li Jun remained calm. "It is too late for them to figure it out now. Hana, give me a status report." Kim Hana's voice came through the speakers with excitement barely contained. "Exotic matter core is at 60% of full power. The quantum fault lines in this area of space are beginning to vibrate in harmony with our equipment. We have passed the point where we cannot stop the process, sir." Cho Suri moved closer to the captain's chair. Her voice was quiet, so the other crew members could not hear her clearly. "Sir, I need to say something for the official record. When Command gave us this mission briefing, they did not tell us we would be using ourselves as bait to catch the enemy." Li Jun looked at his first officer with steady eyes. "The best traps need the most believable bait, Commander, and we all volunteered to do this mission." The bridge became very quiet. The only sound was a low humming noise that seemed to come from deep inside the ship. The enemy fleet had no idea that this humming sound was from systems that were about to change the basic nature of space itself around them. Outside the ship, the Zephyrian warships maintained their perfect formation. Their commanders felt confident that they had trapped a helpless enemy vessel. They had no way of knowing that they had actually placed themselves exactly where the humans wanted them to be. The damaged appearance of the defiant wanderer was carefully planned. Every scorch mark, every broken sensor, every flickering light had been designed to make the ship look weak and defeated. The Zephyrians had fallen for the deception completely. Inside the ship, systems that appeared to be failing were actually charging with enormous amounts of exotic energy. Equipment that looked broken was actually working better than it ever had before. The crew that seemed desperate and afraid were actually following a plan that had been months in the making. Time was running out for the Zephyrian fleet, but they did not know it yet. In just a few more minutes, they would discover what happened when humans decided to turn space itself into a weapon. The real story of the defiant wanderer was hidden deep in secret computer files that only the captain and a few senior officers could access. For 3 long months, this ship had been doing something very different from what everyone thought. She had not been fighting battles or running from enemies. Instead, she had been carefully studying a dangerous area of space called the Helix Nebula. The Helix Nebula was not like normal space. Here, the basic fabric that held reality together was weak and thin. Scientists called these weak spots quantum fault lines. They were like invisible cracks in space itself, places where the normal rules of physics did not work properly. "Captain?" Kim Hanna called from the engineering section, her voice filled with excitement. "We are getting close to the dangerous level. All the quantum mapping information is confirmed and locked into our targeting computer." Li Jun pressed a button to speak to his entire crew throughout the ship. "All crew members, this is your captain speaking. What we are about to do has never been tried on this large scale before. The Helix Nebula contains natural quantum fault lines. These are weaknesses in space and time itself. For many months we have been mapping these fault lines, waiting for exactly the right moment." In the ship's mess hall, Petty Officer Song Day stopped eating his meal and listened with growing amazement. Suddenly everything made sense. The damage to their ship, the strange path they had taken through the nebula, their careful positioning in this exact spot. It had all been planned from the beginning. "The Zephyrians believe they have trapped a wounded and helpless ship," Li Jun continued over the communication system. "In reality, they have positioned themselves at the exact coordinates where the nebula's quantum structure is most weak and vulnerable. Our exotic matter core is not failing as it appears. It has been charging up power for this exact moment." On the bridge, Cho Suri looked at the tactical display with completely new understanding. The enemy fleet's formation was not just good, it was perfect for the humans' secret plan. "Sir, the enemy formation is exactly what we needed. They have arranged themselves in a 3-dimensional pattern that covers all the major fault line intersections." Li Jun nodded with satisfaction. "Exactly as our command predicted they would do. Admiral Kethavar is a very smart military commander, but he thinks only in terms of normal space warfare. He does not understand that humans have learned how to turn space itself into a weapon." Lieutenant Park Gina worked at the science station, watching her instruments with growing excitement and fear. "Captain, I am detecting huge quantum changes building up throughout the entire nebula. The fault lines are beginning to vibrate in harmony with our exotic matter core." The effects were starting to show on sensors throughout the area. Far away, on the Zephyrian flagship, the science officers watched their instruments with growing alarm and confusion. "Admiral," the chief science officer reported, his voice filled with panic. "The entire nebula is showing signs of quantum instability. Whatever the humans are doing, it is affecting the basic structure of space around us." Admiral Kethavar felt his blood turn cold as he began to understand the terrible truth. His experienced military mind quickly put together all the pieces of information. The humans had not been running from his fleet. They had not been caught by surprise. Instead, they had been leading his entire armada into a carefully planned trap. "They did not stumble into our trap," he whispered with growing horror. "We stumbled into theirs." The realization hit him like a physical blow. For months, This single human ship had been studying the nebula, learning its secrets, mapping every dangerous spot. They had made themselves look damaged and helpless to attract enemy fleets to this exact location. The Zephyrians had followed their plan perfectly, arranging their ships exactly where the humans wanted them to be. Back on the defiant Wanderer, Li Jun stood up from his captain's chair. The time for pretending was over. The time for hiding their true purpose was finished. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humans could do when they put their minds to it. Kim Hana, he called to his chief engineer, begin the Cascade Protocol. It is time to show the galaxy what happens when you corner a human ship. Deep in the ship's engineering section, Kim Hana's hands moved over her controls with practiced skill. The exotic matter core that had been slowly building up power for months finally reached the critical level. Systems that had appeared broken suddenly came online with devastating power. The defiant Wanderer's exotic matter core reached the dangerous threshold, and something unprecedented began to happen. Space itself started to change in ways that had never been seen before. The quantum fault lines throughout the nebula began to respond to the ship's energy output. Reality itself began to bend and twist as the humans unleashed forces that the Zephyrians had never imagined possible. Space started to scream with energies that defied all known laws of physics. The trap was finally sprung, and 300 enemy warships were about to discover that they had made the biggest mistake of their lives. Reality shattered like glass. The exotic matter core deep inside the defiant Wanderer released all its stored energy at once. The power burst out in a carefully aimed attack that hit the quantum fault lines Kim Hana had mapped throughout the Helix Nebula. What happened next was immediate and terrible. Cascade started, Kim Hana reported from her engineering station. Her voice stayed calm, even though she had just unleashed something that could destroy entire star systems. Quantum breach is expanding exactly as we calculated it would. Space around the 300 Zephyrian warships began to bend and twist in impossible ways. The first enemy ships caught in the expanding wave of broken space-time had their systems fail instantly. The basic rules of physics that made their technology work started changing randomly. Admiral Zhou grabbed his command chair tightly as his massive flagship shook violently. Alarms rang throughout the bridge as his crew tried to understand. What was happening to them? "What is happening to my ships?" he demanded. His tactical officer stared at his instruments with complete confusion. "Sir, the ship called Retribution is aging very fast. Decades are passing in just seconds. The Stormwalker seems to be caught in some kind of time loop, doing the same 5-second sequence over and over again." On the bridge of the defiant Wanderer, Chosuri watched the tactical display with dark satisfaction. The enemy fleet was falling apart exactly as planned. "Captain, the Cascade is spreading faster than we thought it would. The quantum fault lines are creating a chain reaction throughout the entire nebula." Li Jun nodded as he watched the destruction unfold. Physics becomes unreliable when you mess with the basic structure of reality. Those ships are learning that their weapons, shields, and engines do not work the same way when space-time itself becomes unstable. The Zephyrian fleet had arranged themselves in a perfect military formation for maximum combat effectiveness. But now that same precision became their downfall. Ships that had kept exact distances for the best firing positions suddenly found themselves scattered across multiple dimensions. Some vessels began experiencing reversed causality, where effects happened before their causes. Other ships found their hulls existing in 3 different time streams at the same time. "Navigation is impossible," reported Lieutenant Park Gina from her science station. "Space itself is folding and unfolding around the enemy fleet like origami. They cannot escape because they cannot figure out which direction leads back to normal." Space. Admiral Zhou's tactical display showed complete chaos. Ships disappeared and then reappeared, sometimes in pieces, sometimes as ghostly images of themselves. Some vessels seemed to exist and not exist at the same time. Others flickered in and out of reality like broken lights. "How many ships do we still have that are working?" Zhou asked desperately. His tactical officer studied his instruments with growing confusion. 17 confirmed working ships, sir. Maybe 23 if you count the ships that only exist on Tuesdays." "What does that even mean?" Zhou shouted. I do not know, sir. Physics stopped making sense 4 minutes ago. The quantum storm continued to grow stronger. Ships that tried to fire their weapons found that their energy beams traveled backward in time or split into multiple dimensions. Vessels that attempted to raise their shields discovered that their protective barriers only worked in alternate realities. Some ships found that their engines moved them through time instead of space. One Zephyrian cruiser tried to escape by jumping to faster-than-light speed, but instead found itself moving backwards through its own timeline. The crew watched in horror as their ship undid everything it had done in the past hour, then the past day, then the past week. Another warship activated its emergency systems, but the distress signal it sent arrived at its destination 3 days before it was transmitted. The rescue fleet that responded found empty space because the emergency had not happened yet. "This is impossible," whispered a Zephyrian science officer as he watched his instruments display readings that made no sense. Matter cannot exist in 4 places at once. Time cannot flow in circles. Gravity cannot push instead of pull. But in the Helix Nebula, with its quantum fault lines activated by human technology, impossible things were happening every second. The basic laws that governed the universe had become suggestions rather than rules. On the defiant wanderer, Li Jun turned to his chief engineer. "How long until we can activate the phase shift drive?" 2 minutes, Captain, Kim Hana replied. "The quantum storm needs to reach its strongest point before we can slip between the dimensional layers." The human ship had been specially designed for this mission. Her exotic matter shielding protected her from the chaos she had created, while the Zephyrian armada was being torn apart by forces they had never imagined possible. The defiant wanderer rode the waves of twisted space-time like a ship sailing through a storm. Around them, 300 of the galaxy's most advanced warships were learning that humans did not fight fair. When cornered, humans did not just fight back with bigger weapons. They rewrote the rules of reality itself to turn the entire battlefield into their weapon. The trap was complete, and there was no escape from the chaos the humans had unleashed. The quantum storm reached its most powerful point, and reality around. The Zephyrian fleet was completely broken. Space twisted and bent in ways that should have been impossible. Time moved in circles and backwards. Physics had become meaningless. At this exact moment, Li Jun gave his final command. "Kim Hana, activate the phase shift drive. Take us between the layers of reality." The defiant wanderer began to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot pavement. The ship's outline became fuzzy and unclear as it started to fade from normal space. While reality continued to tear itself apart around the trapped enemy fleet, the human vessel slipped between dimensions like a ghost walking through walls. "Phase shift successful, Captain," Kim Hana reported from her engineering station. "We are now riding the quantum foam between dimensional layers. The enemy fleet cannot follow us to this place." From their safe position outside normal space-time, the human crew watched the final moments of their devastating trap. The Zephyrian armada had once been a proud formation of 300 powerful warships. Now they were scattered across multiple realities, like leaves blown by a hurricane. Some ships aged into dust within seconds as time moved too fast around them. Others became trapped in endless loops, repeating the same moments over and over, forever. Many ships simply stopped existing in any way that made sense. Admiral Kethvar found himself aboard one of the very few vessels that remained partially whole in normal reality. His flagship was damaged and barely working, but at least it still existed in the same dimension where it had started. Most of his fleet was not so lucky. As he struggled to understand what had happened to his armada, Kethvar received one final transmission from the human ship. The message came through waves of static caused by broken space-time, but the words were clear enough. "Admiral," Li Jun's voice said calmly through the communication system, "I want you to deliver a message. To the Galactic Council, humanity does not build bigger guns. We build better traps. The Helix Nebula is now a human protectorate. Any fleet that enters this space without permission will face the same fate as yours." The transmission ended, and the defiant wanderer vanished, completely from all senses. The human ship had disappeared into the spaces between dimensions, leaving behind only empty space and the echoes of broken reality. 3 days passed before rescue fleets from many different species arrived at the edge of the nebula. They came expecting to find the wreckage of a great space battle. Instead, they found mostly empty space and strange quantum echoes that their instruments could barely detect. Of the mighty Zephyrian armada that had entered the nebula with 300 ships, the rescue teams could only recover 17 vessels. Most of these ships were badly damaged and barely functional. Even worse, of the thousands of crew members who had served aboard the Zephyrian fleet, only 43 survivors were found. These survivors told stories that seemed impossible to believe. They spoke of ships that existed in multiple times at once, of weapons that fired backwards through history, of crew members who aged decades in minutes while others became trapped in endless loops of the same few seconds. The rescue teams also recovered detailed sensor logs from the few intact ships. These electronic records told a story that military experts across the galaxy would study for many years to come. The logs revealed something that seemed impossible. A single human vessel had turned an entire star system into a weapon, using the basic forces of reality itself as ammunition. The story spread quickly throughout the galaxy. In the aftermath of the Helix Nebula incident, no military force dared to enter that region of space. The shipping lanes around the nebula became strangely quiet, as both traders and warships gave the area a very wide path. Even the most aggressive species decided that some battles were not worth fighting. But the most frightening part of the story was what happened next. Intelligence networks throughout the galaxy began reporting strange activities in other remote regions of space. Other human ships were spotted in areas with unusual quantum properties. These vessels appeared to be doing detailed scientific studies of local space conditions. Deep in the darkness of space, human exploration ships continued their quiet work. They mapped quantum fault lines in distant star systems. They catalogued dimensional weak points near important trade routes. They prepared traps that would make the Helix Nebula incident look like a small practice exercise. The galaxy's military leaders began to understand a terrifying truth. The destruction of the Zephyrian armada had not been a desperate last stand by a cornered human ship. It had been a demonstration. The humans were showing everyone what they were capable of doing. Word spread through diplomatic channels and military briefings. The message was clear and frightening. Humans did not fight the same way as other species. When other races were cornered, they fought harder with the weapons they had. When humans were cornered, they changed the basic rules of how fighting worked. The galaxy had learned a hard and expensive lesson. 300 ships and thousands of lives had been lost to teach everyone that humans were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. When you corner humans, they do not just fight back with bigger weapons. They rewrite the rules of war entirely. And, somewhere in the depths of space, more human ships continued preparing for the next demonstration.